I'm a 25-year-old male. I got home late last night, which in my apartment complex means all the good parking spots are taken. So I parked a good distance from my apartment and began walking towards it. There's a thunderstorm and it's not raining yet, so the air has energy and it smells great. I decided to take my time and make a loop around my building and come up behind it. As I made the corner and began walking back towards my apartment, I saw a guy coming out of the parking lot between two cars. We nodded, and I slowed my pace. He began walking ahead of me, but I noticed he also slowed his pace to match mine, so I started going even slower, intending to cut the corner as soon as we approached it and enter my apartment as soon as possible, the front door being right on the corner. He seemed reluctant to walk too far ahead of me, so I was already on alert. He approached the first corner, and I came around. He was at my apartment door, shaking my doorknob. He looked right at me as I rounded the corner and said, "I lost my keys." The realization that he was lying and the implication of the lie slammed every one of my systems into high alert. Everything in me told me not to stop, so I kept walking and gave him a sympathetic smile. He turned and stared at me and then asked if I had a phone he could borrow. At this point, I felt stuck and began to panic. He was pretending that he lived in my apartment, so I couldn't get in past him. My car was too far away and in the dark, and any sudden movements would alert him that I was onto him. So I told him my phone died, which caused my heart to immediately skip a beat because now he thought I couldn't call the cops. I walked one door over and started knocking on the door. It was past midnight. The guy was standing at my doorstep, just staring at me. After an eternity, my neighbor, who I'm on friendly speaking terms with, opened the door. I immediately said, "Hey, Kevin," and pushed past him into his apartment. I immediately turned and closed the door and locked it. I explained to my neighbor what was happening, and he went to get his gun, and I called the cops. But the guy was gone now, and I'll never be able to walk around my apartment complex without constantly looking over my shoulder. This is something that happened to me just a couple of months ago. I love Facebook, I love memes, I love talking to new people, I love long comment sections, etc. That being said, I never give away personal information such as where I work or live, my birthday info is private, so on and so on. I've made quite a few friends that I don't know personally but agree with or had really good discussions with. So after commenting back and forth on a friend's post for a while, it was no surprise to me when Tyler messaged me. It started off fairly simple. We just talked about the post we commented on, how you do's, common interests, etc. I was excited to have a new friend. He seemed pretty interesting, and we had a lot in common. I'm not a beauty queen or anything like that, but I let him know after about an hour of casual conversation that I was happily taken. I enjoyed his friendship, but it wouldn't lead to anything more since I'm going to get married next year. He seemed a little upset but respectful. Great. I told him goodnight, went to sleep, and thought nothing more of it. The conversation continued for a few days. He started to get a little pushy if I didn't respond immediately, and I told him I'm very busy, so I may not always be able to answer right away. He apologized and told me he was just bored and lonely. I started to put a little distance because he didn't really back down, but I didn't want to completely give up on my new friendship because I really hated the fact that he was so lonely. One day he randomly messaged me saying he wanted to have me in his arms. I immediately nipped that in the bud, reminding him of my relationship and telling him if he didn't stop, then our friendship would be done. I'm very loyal and respectful to my fiancé. He immediately lost his shit, messaged me saying he didn't care about my fiancé, making threats towards him, etc. I stopped messaging him and selected to put his messages on ignore. He could still message me, but it wouldn't go to my inbox. I made a post about it, and a friend of mine commented and said he had done the same thing to her, except he knew where she lived and would show up outside of her house. I totally freaked out and went to see if there were more messages from him because she told me he was bad news, and I should call the police if any threats were being made. This is where the shitstorm really begins. He messaged me over a dozen times, different things, started off kind of taunting me for not answering him, then moved on to him messaging me about some asshole who cut him off or was driving too slow, then to him saying he was going to shoot the guy, and it would be my fault. I messaged him telling him to leave me the hell alone and stopped replying for a while. He started messaging me, narrowing down on where I live. Now that really freaked me out, as I had never told him where I lived or anything even remotely close to my house. The only thing I ever said was I'd talk to him later because I was going to Arby's to get some food, and my phone was dying. Yet he somehow knew I was 7 minutes from the Arby's by my house. Exactly how long it takes to walk there for me. And there are several Arby's in my city. Then he started narrowing down to what street I lived off of, down to knowing a 4-door black sedan was linked to my address, which there was, but not in my name. It was in my sister's name when she registered it as an Uber. That was enough for me, and I called the non-emergency line. The police refused to do anything, saying until he actually showed up or did something, there was really nothing that could be done. Never mind that he was sending me pictures of dead people and saying that was going to be me and my family and narrowing down my address. Unless he actually showed up, I was screwed. All I could do was apply for a protective order, so I did. Tyler kept messaging me, so I told him there was a PO in place, and he needed to leave me alone. He responded with there was nothing that could be done until he was served and signed it. Which unfortunately is true. My fiancé is in IT and has a cousin who is pretty tech-savvy as well and managed to get the last couple of addresses Tyler had, but the police couldn't find him at either of those. We had license plate numbers, his address, full name, birthday, etc., yet he seemed untraceable. He stopped for a while, but the day of my court case to have the PO extended to 2 years, he started again. My fiancé filed criminal charges for the threats he made. He said, someone could come shoot you in 15 minutes. His last known address was exactly a 15-minute drive from my house. I was terrified, to say the least. I've spent the last couple of months completely afraid. He was arrested and served finally, and as it turns out, he has a history of this. Multiple charges all dropped or dismissed. He has done this to a couple of my friends who showed up to my court case for the criminal charges. They dropped everything from felonies to a misdemeanor disorderly conduct charge with 12 months suspended jail time, depending on his behavior, because they couldn't prove it was him and not someone else behind the keyboard. Especially with me never seeing his face in real life before this court date, even though I had 2 people who had received messages from him and seen him face to face as well. I can't sleep. The slightest noise wakes me up in a panic. It's been a nightmare living hell for me and my family. But I think I'm gonna be okay. My dad runs a tree removal business out of our backyard and has been since I was a baby. When I was 5, we moved to a house with almost 5 acres of property so he could park his work trucks, use wood chippers, and split firewood comfortably. As a child, my brother and I loved playing near that area. Our house is a little ways down a long driveway, and the driveway continues a bit, and then there's a garage with a little apartment attached. At that time, a couple of my parents' friends rented this apartment, which was about 50 yards away from the house. Fast forward to when I was 10 years old, and my brother was 13. Also, something to note is my dad's employees weren't exactly admirable people. Ex-cons, thieves, and I don't even know truthfully, but workers came and went. It's obviously not the best job to work in the hot summer months, and then have no work during the winter. Anyway, my dad hired these 2 brothers who were in their early 20s. One of them, I remember, was very good looking, and his brother seemed dorky to me and wore glasses. 10-year-old me didn't pay much attention, obviously. All I wanted to do was climb the wood piles in my backyard. One fall day after school, I remember my mom saying it was too chilly to play outside and to stay inside. I remember this so vividly. I literally remember what I was wearing and how I wanted my favorite stuffed animal near me as I colored. So I'm coloring. It's probably around 4:30, and my dad and his workers have just gotten back and are in the garage, maybe smoking weed and having a beer together. Apparently, that was a normal routine after a long day. My mom was reading or something right beside me. My brother was a few houses down the street with his friend and his family, whom we've grown close with. All of a sudden, my dad comes running through the back door, and he's yelling, "Get out of the house! Grab her and get out now! Run to the neighbor's house right now!" He's yelling all of this to my mom. Scared and confused, my mom jumps up, as do I, and I'm grateful my stuffed animal is close by. So I grab that, and we run out of the front door to the neighbors. It was chilly, and my mom and I were barefoot. We flew up our long driveway, and my dad, who I thought was behind us, stalled at the end of our driveway on the phone, yelling to someone. We got to the neighbors where my brother was, and we all saw the cops speed by our house. We were all so confused. As it turned out, those brothers that my dad had hired were hiding something. The dorky one with the glasses was very mentally ill and was apparently off his meds. Him, his brother, and his family were too embarrassed to mention that, and apparently, smoking weed and drinking alcohol was a trigger. That evening, when the employees smoked weed and had a beer after that job, they failed to notice that the guy went to his car to grab a rifle and started shooting all over the place, especially at the wood piles, which I would have been playing on normally, and into the garage with my dad's employees. He also shot at the cars and left bullet holes in many of the workers and the tenants' cars. The workers ran into the attached apartment to the garage with that couple living there. During this, my dad ran as fast as he could to the house to save my mom and me. So my dad's badass friend, who lived in the apartment, grabbed his hunter rifle and ran down to the garage area while the employees hid in the shower. He saw the shooter jump in his car with his gun and was about to speed off. My dad's friend took his own rifle, broke the shooter's car window, and grabbed the gun out of his hands. But the shooter took off down our long driveway. I gotta say, I'm glad my mom and I weren't running on the driveway when he was speeding out at full speed. The cops caught him very quickly, just down the street, opposite end of the street where we hid. He was arrested, and my parents didn't press charges since no one was hurt. They were more upset that this all could have been avoided had someone just mentioned he was mentally ill. My dad doesn't run background checks, just will pay whoever is willing and needed cash. Shady, I'm well aware. Also, something I literally just learned tonight. The day prior to the shooting, my brother had a weird encounter with the shooter. He was at a gas station with our neighbor, a friend of his, in the same family's house we hid at the next day. My dad's worker pulled up and offered them a ride home, literally a 3-minute car ride, and they agreed because they knew and recognized him. They noted that he's strangely wearing black nail polish and his hood up, which wasn't normal of him, but they thought nothing of it. We think now that maybe it had to do with him being off his meds, or maybe it was a coincidence. Who really knows? I'm 25 now, and I remember the experience vividly. I hope I never hear my dad's voice with that tone ever again. It was so scary. I still do not know how I didn't hear the gunshots, though. My mom believed because we live very close to a gun range, we have grown accustomed to that sound nearby. But who really knows? So, today I was staying in a hotel about 275 miles from home. I'd been in the city for a couple of days, but we just switched hotels last night due to the fact that the other one was mold-infested and gross. Anyways, we're here to drop my brother off at college, and tonight was his last night with us before he left. We decided to have a silly string fight in the hotel parking lot, run around the outside of the hotel. Just fun, stupid teenager things. Somebody was standing on the top of the stairs that led to the second floor of the motel, watching and staring at us. No big deal though, we were being pretty loud and obnoxious. My brother and my mom left to bring my brother back to his dorm room. I decided to stay behind at the hotel room as all I had been doing for the past 3 days was rotting in a car, and I needed a break. So I was on the phone with my friend Adrian. So I was just talking to Adrian when all of a sudden someone knocks on the door the same exact way my mom does. We have one of those secret knocks. I was about to swing open the door per usual as I was 99% certain it was my mother, but for some reason, something just told me to look out the peephole. The person standing outside of my hotel room door was the same exact person watching us earlier on top of the stairs. I'm very paranoid, so obviously, I didn't answer the door. I started freaking out and talking to Adrian quietly, and the person yells, "Open this fucking door," and starts banging harder on the door. I sat there talking quietly to Adrian for about 5 to 10 minutes, and then slowly walked back up to the door and looked through the peephole, when this person slammed their body weight against the door and started viciously shaking the handle. At this point, I texted my brother on Snapchat at least 30 times to come back to the hotel. He said they're about 10 minutes away and just to sit tight and that he's coming back. He did, and by the time they got back, the person was gone. Definitely not the worst of experiences, but I'm still pretty shaken up by this. Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give the video a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a terrifying tale. See you in the next one.